Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic Podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 142.
So, Ben, I don't know if you know this, but I went to a military academy for my undergrad.
I definitely know that. I think most of our audience does too. But listeners, if you're new, welcome to the Bad at Magic Podcast.
I try not to talk about it a lot. It wasn't that big a deal. It wasn't, the number one source of trauma in my entire life. I have no scars, no chips on my shoulder, and no bad feelings or thoughts about it at all.
Listeners, if you want to hear the full story, I interviewed Josh fully on his experience at the United States Air Force Academy in episode 12.
The Air Force Academy, USAFA, that's only one of 5 military academies that exist in the nation.
I only know of 3.
We have the U.S. Military Academy, better known as West Point, and that's the Army equivalent.
Right.
We have the United States Naval Academy, better known as Annapolis, which is the naval equivalent.
Right, which also has the Marine Corps candidates.
That's right. The Marine Corps officers do go to Annapolis. I hear that's really competitive to be the Marine guys at Annapolis. There's also the United States Coast Guard Academy.
Oh, okay. I forgot about the Coast Guard. I'm still missing one, though.
The United States Merchant Marine Academy.
Oh, interesting.
So, the Coast Guard Academy is one of the lesser-known ones, and the Merchant Marine flies way under the radar. But what's very interesting about the Merchant Marine Academy is part of their curriculum is that their cadet midshipmen serve on operational live mission ships, like out in the Merchant Marine, all the time, as part of their curriculum on one of their summer programs. And so they'll ship off a couple of kids that are still in college going to become officers to go serve on an active duty ship just to see what it's really like. And what's interesting is they kept this going through World War II. And so there were cadet midshipmen serving in the Merchant Marine that served and died during World War II. There was 142 of them that died. There's your 142.
There's our 142.
And they honor the 142. They've got a bunch of memorials the way that the military members do. But because of that, the Merchant Marine Academy is the only military or service academy in the nation that's allowed to carry a battle standard as part of their color guard, because they had midshipmen that served and died in combat.
Oh, students.
Yes,
okay.
Students.
Oh, interesting.
I kept saying midshipmen. That's in cadets.
Sorry.
Yeah,
so, listeners, that means students. That means while they were still students, they actually fought in the war. So it would be like sending, I don't know, college kids before they graduate.
Well, it's like serving a summer internship, but in this case, your summer internship was on a destroyer in the Atlantic.
A destroyer or a cargo ship?
Ben, I don't know what the Merchant Marine does. Thank you for pointing
obviously.
Out that, thank you for pointing out that lack in that glaring hole in my knowledge of this topic. Listen, I did just enough research to get through the numbers.
Sorry, I shouldn't have pushed it. We'll set the record straight next time. Speaking of setting the record straight, Josh, after you and I talked about the honey, air quotes, scam, as you pointed out rightfully, there's actually nothing technically illegal that PayPal Honey was doing by having people download this free browser extension that hijacked their commissions from websites.
Deliciously evil.
Okay, here's the most deliciously evil part about this, and I failed to bring this out because I only realized it after the fact. While Honey was establishing their user base, they were just dumping cash into this thing by paying well-known influencers to promote it on their platforms. At that point, I'm sure they weren't making very much money. They were just spending lots of money on advertising to get an installed user base so that then once their browser extension is on a bunch of browsers, then they start raking in the cash.
Yeah, the dial flips. You get a bunch of investment cash early on, a bunch of private equity or whatever, and then you make the platform a thing, and then you start collecting on it.
So here's why I realized, again, why the influencers that advertise it are the ones that should be the most upset about it. Because while those influencers were advertising, who were the people that were installing the Honey extension on their web browser?
Oh, yeah, we kind of touched on this.
I know, but I want to be... Yeah. I want to be more explicit about it.
Gotcha.
Of the Honey installed user base, a disproportionate portion of it are the viewers of the influencers that were getting paid to advertise for it. So then when Honey achieved their goal for how many they'd reach critical mass of how many people were going to watch a Honey ad 100 times and finally install the web browser, and then they just stopped getting it. So their money being spent to pay those influencers wasn't well spent anymore. So they stopped. They stopped advertising with all of those influencers. And then they started stealing all of those influencers' other advertising money.
Oh yeah, let's fix the sequencing there. No, they were stealing from them the entire time. They just stopped paying the influencers to get more people to be able to steal from the influencers.
Yeah. But of those 20 million users, probably at least half are the people that, came from watching these ads on social media.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be. Only half? Honey doesn't exist outside of the internet. What is your friend going to tell you?
Does Grandma go to the app store and say, I want a browser extension to help me find coupon codes?
All right, everyone, let's go around the table and say what we're thankful for this year. Ben, what are you thankful for?
I'm thankful for the Honey browser extension.
Let me tell you, I saved 36
me 10 bucks
cents.
on yarn. There was something you and I predicted in episode 112. We did a Bad at Tech segment, and we reviewed a news piece where they had talked about how the streaming platforms were diversifying, and we were kind of griping about the fact that if you wanted to watch Star Trek, you had to have the Paramount one, and if you wanted, and everybody was getting their own to try to get in on the game, and it was becoming cable TV again.
I think it is cable TV again. I think we're there.
And at the time we were reviewing that Disney Plus had posted a large loss in the quarter, and we were predicting that the end of this being very lenient on someone having a password and sharing it with all their friends was coming to an end.
Right.
So that was in November of 2023. So it's been 13 months since then, and I got a text from one of my family members who no longer lives at my house anymore saying, Disney finally caught up with me. The golden days are over.
Oh, your dad, your Disney Plus that I've been mooching off you for years no longer works.
So here we are in the year 2025. So it took a while, but it's the date has finally arrived. I don't know if this will solve their solvency problems, but I think their strategy was designed to be very slow and gentle. That's why it took 13 months, because they definitely could have flipped the switch the next day if they'd wanted.
It's just one of those things that they want to, I don't know, they're going to put out something that nobody's going to like. They're going to put that out in the news. And if they implemented it the next day, then it would just keep people mad. But then you just wait a while, people forget about it. You slow roll it. You do it in batches. I'm taking all this back. That's what it was. They hired, of Disney Plus with its quadrillion users that are in there all the time, they hired 6 guys in a back office to actually implement this thing. And so it's just going to take them a minute to get through that list.
That's a way of doing stuff. Like you were talking about how early in the days of like information technology, they would just introduce like liquid mediums that were slow for transmitting radio waves as a way to slow down the propagation of the wave.
That was part of the machine that was decoding Enigma in World War II, and I love it. Like, we need a memory buffer for this many microseconds, and it was a specific type of gin that they could buy from the pub down the street. The best computer science story ever.
That's great. You and I were talking about something else entirely, and you said, ask me on the podcast about my views on censorship. I remember. In episode 141, we talked about...
Was it 41 that talked... It was the TikTok ban. Dude, TikTok.
No, not the TikTok ban. We were talking about... what was the top... Oh, we were talking about cancel culture.
Ah, yes, cancel culture.
And I was talking about how I feel like in a case where freedom is in question, we should err on the side of free speech rather than the side of restricting ideas, even if they're words and concepts that we find more repugnant or repulsive. And we went back and forth on that. I don't think either of us changed each other's mind, but as we do on this podcast, we respect each other's ideas. And I think that was the context that we talked about censorship. And now the TikTok ban has come up, and I think that's different than censorship. There's 2 different things going on here, but let's talk about all of it.
This could be a main segment, but you're going to cram me into this pre-book reading segment of the podcast. Okay, Ben, I got you. Rein me in a bit. Keep me off of my soapbox. So, TikTok's being banned. I'm sure everyone is aware at this point that Congress passed a bipartisan bill, which is crazy, that they're going to ban TikTok if they don't sell to an American company. So,
it's funny, it's so broad reaching and far sweeping that it went to the Supreme Court almost immediately, and just today, the 17th of January, they upheld it. So it looks like it's going to go forward.
Well, it's not broad sweeping. That's the problem. It's targeting this app by name, and that's the reason that it went to the Supreme Court. Like, the Congress doesn't get to call out one successful social media platform and shut it down for reasons that, I don't know if you're aware of this. The government keeps saying, oh, it's for national security reasons, but have not released not one sentence explaining what that means. Like, in some weird way, they're going to manipulate the algorithm, which is going to make you against the capitalist regime that we're in. They're going to turn you all communist.
This is a really deep cut, but I want to harken back to the discussion that you and I had after the last major school shooting. I think it was the one in Texas. And that I wish that narrowed it down enough. I can't remember the name of the town. And maybe there's been more than one in that town, but whatever. And we were talking about all of the different things that contribute to the problem that is school shootings. And I was arguing we should do everything we could, and you were kind of arguing we should go for the thing that represents the biggest part of the danger.
Yes.
And I
think
that's
guns.
kind of...
I said guns. Go for the guns.
Right. And I think that's kind of what's going on here.
No,
they're saying...
False. Incorrect.
Give me a chance to say my idea, and then you can rebut it, but you can't start before I've said it. What's being said here is that we know and have proven that the Chinese government regime is hostile to the American people, and they've shown a penchant and even a history of utilizing their influence and power to change the businesses in their country and how they influence things. And because they are the single largest social media platform being used by people in the United States, that's too big of a risk for us to take. So it either needs to go out of Chinese hands or be banned in the United States.
That's not the only Chinese piece of software that we use. That's not the only Chinese
I get it.
Piece of hardware
Again,
that we purchase.
Back to the gun idea, this is the biggest one. It's not the only, it's not comprehensive, it's just the biggest one. I don't know why this is happening. I'm just trying to defend it.
Well, and TikTok, the American version of TikTok, by the way, all of that data is stored on servers in the United States, and only 20% is owned by anybody even related to the Chinese government. The other 80%, 20% of it is owned by the employees of the company as one of the stock sharing programs, and the other parts are all investors in America.
And I think all those arguments you're making are very plain, and yet somehow this is still going forward. So yeah, it's the conspiracy theorist in me that comes out, and it's the American big tech that's getting their lunch eaten by this other company, and they cook up some random stupid idea that they can pitch to people in the. So you think Meta and Alphabet and are just lobbying in Washington to ban TikTok?
Meta and Alphabet set records for the most money spent on lobbying in 2024 for the TikTok ban.
Yeah. Hashtag a boring dystopia. That's probably it.
But here's, okay. So, all right. So there's fun aspects of this that I want to talk about. And let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
And so TikTok, everybody on TikTok for the last week, we know this was going to happen. And I'm on TikTok every day, and I'm seeing all these people what are we going to do without TikTok? What are we going to do without TikTok? And then somebody one day goes, I found the thing that we're going to use for TikTok. It's called Red Note. And it is 100% owned and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. And it's awesome. I've been using it for a week, and it's fantastic.
Oh, I get it. Let's stick it to the man by switching from the persona non grata Chinese company to another Chinese company that wasn't banned.
There was one day early this week where I saw 2 or 3 things on TikTok hey, I'm trying this Red Note thing. It's the Chinese version of TikTok owned by China. The next day was everybody I switched to Red Note, and it's fantastic. All the comments are hilarious. Yeah, you've got to learn some Mandarin because the whole thing is in Chinese, but it's exactly what TikTok is, and it's great. And I'm getting cultural peeks into Chinese culture, and everybody they're calling us TikTok refugees, and it's this huge joke, and we have this great community. No, wait for it. The next day, I started seeing posts, people I'm on Red Note, and I'm getting a little mad at our government because China's so much cooler. Look at this $15,000 minivan that only is sold in China that they don't import into the United States. Look at how low the food prices in the grocery store are in China. And they're going through this thing. Also, somebody posted, as a part of the end user license agreement for Red Note, because it's owned by the Chinese Communist Party, it says, like, you will only post things that uphold Chinese communist values, and you will subscribe to a good Chinese communist life. Like, that's in the EULA. And people are like,
it's in the name, Josh. It's called Red Note.
But in exactly like you said, it's just so delicious that, like, oh, well, we're afraid that American people are being spied on by the Chinese government, possibly through this thing that's partially owned by somebody who's associated with China. And so we're going to ban it. Okay, cool. We're going to make an actual Chinese communist app, the #1 app on both Google Play Store and the Apple Store, for a week, because we're all going to switch to it.
I saw I'm sure Oregon and Nevada and Arizona all kind of had the problem where people are fleeing California and they're like, Californians go back home. I saw a version of that from some Chinese user of Red Note. Like, all you Americans coming to Red Note got to get out of here. You're whoring up the place.
So, like you said, yes, it's part sticking it to the man. And it's part, the other part, somebody put it so great on these TikToks, is like, oh, well, the Chinese government might be manipulating me. How? By showing me how terrible it is? I know how terrible it is. Just give me my stupid, funny videos. I will give you all of my data. My data has been disclosed against my will by every company I have ever signed anything with in America already anyway. What's the problem?
I get that response, but I think it's a bit naive. Just like 2 weeks ago, we would have said that Honey was making money by stealing your data. That wasn't it at all.
I said Honey wasn't doing anything wrong. I am on record saying Honey's doing fine.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how if I'd asked you before that video came out explaining what Honey was actually doing, how they were making money, you would have said, oh, they're stealing your data. It's like this intellectual shortcut for not understanding what's actually happening.
Yeah, and I thought, honestly, before the Honey thing happened, I thought that's what it was. It was like, oh, I'm installing this browser app. They're going to give me discounts, and in return, they're going to track every click, everything that I stare at on my screen 24/7.
Just like how we proved back in the 2020 presidential elections, there were rooms full of Russian operatives or paid Russian operatives just seeding social media with weird, contradictory, inflammatory content designed to just rile people up against the opposition. All
right, so the Red Note was the funny thing. That was my funny detour. Let's go.
Okay.
I asked you to ask me about my views on censorship. Okay.
Yes, let me hear it.
So the TikTok thing is, it's thinly veiled. Like, oh, we don't like this thing, and this thing is a platform. Like, there's a whole lot of different motivations for the reasons, or the conspiracy theories, if you want to think of it that way, of why they want it shut down. But a non-zero amount of it is because that's where a lot of people are getting their news. There are legitimate news outlets that are on TikTok that give you legit, real things. And if you can't control the narrative, well, that's the first step to being an autocracy, is you have to be able to control where people are hearing.
Yeah, and characteristically, the TikTok platform just feeds you what it wants you to see next, and who knows how that's happening.
The same way
you can follow people.
Yeah, the same way the YouTube algorithm does. It's just driving engagement.
You don't know that it's the same, or you don't know that that there isn't someone putting their finger on the scale, or that they've installed controls that they could if they wanted to. Again, devil's advocate here.
I get it. I get it. But that's my choice. I'm an informed consumer. I should have that choice. I have that choice with Meta. Meta is a polarizing and a radicalizing platform that has been demonstrably proven, like in different studies that they've conducted. Every social media platform does this because the algorithm is trying to drive engagement.
Sure. This is not a double standard. China bans hundreds of U.S. websites and filters their content at the national borders and, monitors people's behavior. And
that you're absolutely correct. And so, is that the level that we're aspiring to? Are we trying to be more like the Chinese government?
No. So are you asking me to buy the slippery slope hypothesis here? If we ban TikTok, does that mean we're on the way to becoming like them?
I don't think a generic, ill-defined, and unproven risk to national security is good enough to shut down a platform for people to communicate.
Do you think maybe they know things at the classified level that they're not telling us, so they have to make like lame kind of public excuses even though they know the truth that they can't tell us?
Having been on the other side of that door, I know that kind of thing exists. But Ben, look me in the eye and tell me, like, how is this any different from any other app that we've downloaded?
I don't know. I think the discussion's just more interesting if I'm defending the other side. Like you, I think the best way to control these kinds of things is through personal choice.
Well, right. I don't want it's the slippery slope I'm afraid of is not the like, oh, they're taking away the things that I like. The slippery slope that I don't like is they are using very poor justification to restrict my ability to communicate.
Yeah. And I think back to that movie there was a couple of movies that came out in the mid-90s that were really prescient related to how things went down when the COVID outbreak happened back in 2020 that were about Ebola outbreaks and how the government has these vast powers for controlling your freedom that most of the time they don't exercise, but they could if they wanted to. So there was one called Outbreak that was about Ebola getting out of Africa in the United States, and the government would just descend on a town with the National Guard and close the borders, and that was it.
Yep.
No excuses, no choices. You're staying here until this outbreak is under control.
And they almost, the whole point of that one was they almost nuked the town to get rid of the outbreak. Whoa. What a scary movie. That could never happen. Another thing I saw on TikTok, I'm going to throw this out there, in The Matrix, when they said, like, oh, this is human civilization at the turn of the millennium, 1999, like, as the peak of human accomplishment. And we all chuckled in the theater. Go, oh, that's going to age poorly. And now 25 years later, we're like, no, that was
99 was
it.
pretty good.
Yeah, it was probably a high point.
Well, okay, the point I was making with that is that most of the time we operate pretty freely, and we expect our government to protect us when they can and when they should. And you and I both know that they can't always tell us everything because some things have to be secrets.
That's not good enough. That's not good enough, man.
I get now that you're on the outside and you can't know the secrets, you're like, no, they can't do it unless they tell me why.
I don't, because I was on the other side and because I've seen some of the justifications that they use for things, even if they have those reasons, I still don't think they're good enough.
All right, let's try to detach this from the intricacies of the internet and filtering and corporations and stuff. And let's kind of take this and detach it. And I think the same moral principles apply to the idea of book banning.
Yes, which is also a huge problem now for some reason.
Yeah, weirdly. Because who goes to libraries? But
don't hang on. Don't flippantly like, oh no, like you ban books. Nobody reads books anyways. Shut up, Ben. People read books. This is a thing.
I stand by what I said.
Don't flip. You can't restrict access to information flippantly. Oh, it's just books. Nobody cares. Oh, it's just TikTok. Nobody cares. What happens when they come for the platform you care about, Ben? You'll care then, but it's too late. You've already let them justify with their ill-defined national security threat. So now you can't stand up. So
then let's put this in the realm of book banning. I saw this great argument, and it's funny how when you take something large and you reduce it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, some of the same principles still apply. And it was this lady that says, I have a little free library that I built in my front yard. It can only hold about 40 books. I try to keep it stacked with a wide variety of things and let the neighbors come and put things in and take things out at will. But somebody keeps putting religious books in there and I don't like it. What do I do?
It's her library. That's private property and a totally different thing.
Sure. So let's pretend it's a public little free library, but you have there's always constraints that have nothing to do with whether or not you're deciding what ideas are and aren't valid. There's budgets, there's size, there's age, there's relevance, there's popularity, there's a whole bunch of other things happening. So sometimes we use these ideas like, should we have books about significant historical LGBTQ figures or something like that, and people make that a battlefield for the culture wars. And the library becomes the host of this battle that's happening.
The battleground, yeah. Okay, I have two comments about your analogy here, okay? The first of all, it's an apples and oranges thing, because you're talking about banning something in the library, and I'm talking about a situation where the government is shutting down the library. So that's kind of a different discussion. Even if it's curated, it doesn't matter. The government doesn't like what's in that library, so we're going to shut the whole thing down. Or even
Okay,
we don't
well,
like
if we
what
want to
some
try
of
to
the
make
things
it
are.
apples to apples, and we'll say, let's say the library has a subscription to magazines, and we're gonna end this subscription to magazines, but you'll still have books,
Okay.
and you'll still have.
Okay, great. Well, that I just that's the point. Is I just wanted to say like
Okay,
actually,
fine.
I just wanted actually. All right. So the second point is it's the problem is the restriction to any information, right? And so if you're talking about the idea of a public library, just because you find some of the things in there morally or socially reprehensible, you disagree with some of the ideas that are contained therein, doesn't mean everybody does. And why is your version of what is okay more okay than my version of what is okay? If neither of us
Yeah.
can agree on what is okay, then everything needs to be okay, and let the buyer beware.
Kinda, but I feel like I'm talking to a different Josh. Because last week you were
In
telling
what
me,
sense?
last time we recorded, you were telling me, well, some things people say aren't okay, and it just should, and I've decided that, and they should never be able to say those things.
There's a difference between a book that sits on a shelf that requires my energy to stand up and go read it and ingest that information at my choice versus somebody standing up, getting in my face, and spitting vitriol at me, whether I like it or not.
Yeah, and then there's a gray space somewhere in between there where it's neither of those things. It's neither something you have to get, nor is it in your face someone shouting at you. Because I that's not really.
Oh, it's just something. Oh, here we go. Let's get deep. It's just something that exists, and its existence, its mere presence in the world, is offensive to you.
Yeah. Let's say we could have. I mean, the Library of Congress supposedly has every book, but it doesn't. I mean, we know this when we have specialized bookstores that carry the kind of books you can't find anywhere else, or special desires. You know, like an adult bookstore carries the kind of materials you would never find in a public library. Are we restricting people's freedoms and expression by not trying to carry that, or are we just recognizing that we'll let the specialties handle that and we'll treat that separately?
And this is the problem when we start talking about freedom of speech, is because it's an entire lake of gray.
Yeah.
But the idea, my whole idea is like, yeah, it's gray, and you pick out any specific thing, and we're going to argue about it until the cows come home. But if we zoom out, my whole thing is there's like everything should be on the table. There is nothing that is so left wing or right wing or reprehensible or whatever that we should completely remove it from the conversation, because there is no way that you can get everyone around this table to agree that it doesn't deserve a place on this table.
Yeah, I agree. I think ultimately that's a value we can get behind, is just protecting people's freedom of speech, and that will lead to the best overall outcome for all people. Out of curiosity, do you know what TikTok's explicit content policy is?
They try to take down and when you talk about explicit, you're talking about like adult content, like
Sure.
Okay, so they don't allow blatant pornography in the common sense, like no female, male genitalia, no like nothing like that. They have a team, and the team is pretty good. So the fact, all right, it sneaks on there, and I appreciate when it does sometimes. When I'm scrolling through, it's like, oh look. Here is a username that is a bunch of random jumbled characters. They only have 5 videos that they've all posted in the last hour. They are all the same video. And look, yep, it's a lady flashing her boobs in the background.
Well, and it doesn't last very long.
It doesn't last. It will be banned like in less than 24 hours. And that's pretty good considering the amount of content that is uploaded to this platform every day. But at the same time, thanks TikTok. I could use some boobs right now.
So what if instead of us discussing TikTok, which is a platform that has kind of marketed itself to the youngest people, and it's been able to maintain that status by having this very strong filtering and explicit content banning, and instead we were talking about Pornhub. What if Congress just said, we're banning Pornhub?
Oh, you didn't hear about this? They're Congress didn't do it. There was it was either Florida or Texas. They came out and said, oh, well, it was Florida. You can't have a pornography site in our state you can't see pornography in our state unless you verify with a photo ID that you are of a certain age to be able to view this content. And we are going to fine any website that doesn't have strict enough controls. And so Pornhub just decided Not worth it. And they shut off their site in
access
Florida.
to Florida.
Yeah.
So now you have to have a VPN to access it in Florida.
Yeah. And people were super pissed about it. And Pornhub's throwing their hands like, we have absolutely zero onus to implement any amount of cost to let you have access to our platform.
Huh. Yeah, I don't want to fully go down the pornography rabbit hole, but I'm with you. I think censorship in general leads to being the thought police and gets us to George Orwell 1984. Like,
okay, even crazier. This is what's even crazier, Ben. So the Supreme Court, as we're recording on Friday, January 17th. This morning, the Supreme Court came out and said we're not going to rule on the constitutionality of the law that targets TikTok and says it's going to be
which
banned.
Just means they're not going to stop it, so it's going to go forward.
They're not going to stop it. But what President Biden then did is came out and put a 36-hour stay on the implementation of that and the enforcement of that law. He is 100% just kicking it to President Trump.
Yeah, and he's president for 3 more days.
And Trump has decided he's gone complete 180 on this entire topic because, this is only rumor and I can't confirm this, but apparently the actual CEO of TikTok has been kissing his butt. And so now Trump's like, oh, I think TikTok is a fine platform and it should be able to stick around.
This is what I want to tell you. If any of you listeners are Trump lovers, here's what you need to understand if you don't already know this about him. Trump's policies are not conservative or liberal. They're his overriding value is his own self-efficacy, his ego, his whatever's pleasing him, whoever kisses his butt the most, whoever's the most loyal to him. And if you look at everything he does through that lens, it makes so much more sense than if you try to evaluate it based on terms of Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative.
So there is a statute in the law that says the president can put a 90-day pause on the ban of TikTok if ByteDance needs the time to find a buyer and sell their portion of the company. And so a lot of people are speculating that day one in office, Trump is going to implement. It's like, oh no, they got 90 more days. And then everyone's just going to forget about the thing entirely. And it's just going to continue to be a platform.
Or Elon Musk is going to buy it.
I don't think they'll let Elon Musk buy it.
After they've devalued it.
No, he's got other things to worry about, like shutting down the Department of Education and the Environmental Protection Agency.
Okay. I don't want to fully go back into that episode. That was not a popular episode, or episode 137. But if you're interested, go back and listen to episode 137. But this is the last podcast that is being recorded before Donald Trump takes office for what will hopefully be his final term as president of the United States of America. And
Ben, let's be real for just a second. There is a very small but non-zero chance that both of us will be raided by the FBI on Monday.
I'd like to think that if there is a list, and there may be a list, that there's just so many people on it that it's going to take a while to get to us. Just like you were saying about the Disney Plus family thing that took 13 months because only 6 guys were working on it.
Yeah, I'll be in the back of the paddy wagon on Monday and be like, dude, first wave, high fives. Like, we're the ones. We did it. We're the problems.
I read an article in the New York Times today by the editorial board that was saying, the only way that this thing's going to go downhill fast is if we don't stand up to it.
Stand up to what? Just
to the tyranny, to the oppression, to the change in the status quo, to the disruption in the rule of law, to the disrespect for the peaceful transfer of power, to all the things that made the United States of America great.
I guess we'll see.
Complete subject change. Back in episode 134 of the Bad at Magic podcast, you and I did something I think that promised to be the first in a 5-part series. So,
and then promptly forgot about it.
I didn't forget about it.
You don't forget about anything. You were quoting episode 112 from 13 months ago, Ben. I don't remember what I had for breakfast 2 days ago, and you're quoting episodes like 100.
Josh, I don't have a good memory. I have notes that I can search with Control F.
Okay, this just listeners. Ben's the one that's prepared. I'm just the idiot that shows up and dances.
So in episode 134, we did a segment, I think we called it Bad at Love. It was based on the 5 love languages, which are, acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, gifts, and...
that's a good one.
Dang it. Whatever. Quality time.
Quality time, yes.
Okay.
Good job.
And Josh actually was the one that came up with this idea. He had offered this brilliant deconstruction of the idea of acts of service by proposing a metric that measures the intensity of it. So if you want to know about that, go ahead and listen to episode 134. What we're going to do is do that again. So this week we're going to talk about words of affirmation. Josh is going to propose a intensity metric for it, and I'm going to give it some categories. So you go first.
Okay, cool. So this is one of those ones where you text me halfway through the week. It's like, hey, I want to do this. I need you to come up with the intensity metric. And then I immediately start texting you back a rant. Like, there is no way that I can come up with something like this that's so complicated on such short notice.
And then you do just like you always do.
Okay, wait, never mind. I got it. Yeah. All right, so words of affirmation is specifically like talking and demonstrating verbally to your partner that you love and appreciate them. Right?
Yes.
That you will always be there for them, and that that you still desire them, and you still find them attractive. All of the things to reinforce their ego, their id, whatever the proper term is. It's all about communication. And so, Ben, there's only 3 axes that we can measure communication off of.
Ooh, last time we only had 2 axes, so this is going to be a 3-dimensional intensity.
This is. It creates like a cloud, and it's like a colored cloud, and
okay.
Also it has a positive and a negative end because words can hurt.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about that also in a past episode. I can't remember which one, where we talked about the 5 hate languages.
That's right. And there's words of disrespect. That's one of the hate languages.
Uh-huh.
I remember all of those. Love languages, whatever. Words of anti-love, I'm behind it.
All right.
Okay, so you ready, Ben? Here's my 3 axes. You can say the right thing or the wrong thing.
Okay.
That's one axis. Another axis. You can say it at the right time or you can say it at the wrong time.
Ooh, I like how this is shaping up.
The third axis. You can say it with the right tone, or you can say it with the wrong tone.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so this makes a 6 square Punnett square, or 3 by 3.
No, it makes a 3 by 3 by 3. It makes a Rubik's Cube square.
Okay, all right, cool. So you can say the right thing at the right time using the wrong tone. But the outcomes are binary almost.
That's what I love. So here's the thing. You have to think of it as a scale, right? Each axis is a number line.
Uh-huh.
On the positive end, it goes to whatever number that you like. But this is what I want to point out that's very important. The negative end is logarithmic because it scales way faster than the positive end does, okay?
Disrespect is a way bigger withdrawal from the relationship bank than love is a deposit.
Exactly. Because if you say the right thing at the right time with the wrong tone, you don't get... It's not like, it's plus 25, plus 25, minus 25, so it's positive still. No. You are ultra negative, sir. Like you almost flipped or inverted the meaning of the whole thing by saying it that way. It undoes
all of it. Oh, man, That's beautiful. I love it. This reminds me of the using matrices in like high school algebra. Where you multiply them, you're like, why does this become negative? It's because it's words of disrespect.
When your wife comes up to you, all right, so I'm gonna try on the spot. I didn't think of these in advance, but I want to give some examples, okay? And I know this is words of affirmation. It's all about love, but the one scenario that I want to try to weave a thread through is imagine you're at your mother-in-law's funeral, okay? You have so many opportunities to say so many things. And so saying the right thing versus the wrong thing. Oh, I'm just going to miss her so much. You're right, honey. She was a vision and just a light for everyone in her life. That's the right thing to say. Like, she wasn't that great and everyone kind of hated her. That's the wrong thing to say. So there's your right and your wrong axis.
Okay.
There's the right time and the wrong time. It's like, oh, I'm just going to miss her so much. You're right. And she was a vision and a light to everybody that knew her. That's the time to say that. When you're at the buffet and you're just eating the snacks, like, oh, yeah, like, I'm going to miss the way she makes her sweet potatoes. Like, oh, she was a vision and a light. Like, dude, wrong time. Read the room. Right tone versus the wrong tone, okay?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to miss her so much. Like, she was a vision and a light to everyone that knew her. And then give her wife a hug. That's great. That's positive. That's the right tone. Oh, I'm going to miss her so much. Yeah. Oh, she was a real vision and a light to everybody that knew her. You're going to get punched in the face.
Why are you so good at that? Okay, is tone super axis? Like, does it override everything? Can you say something with the right? All right, so let's. Can you say the wrong thing at the wrong time with the right tone and it overrides? I don't think so.
Is it all right? So in this scenario where we had two positives and the tone was the negative, the tone overrides and makes the whole thing negative. Does the same hold true for the others? If you say the right thing with the right tone, but at the wrong time, does that override it? And all I can think of is the stupid sitcom movie where it's like, hey, I know this person just died, but you still owe me $15. just gonna leave that in here.
So you're saying the wrong thing, maybe at the right time and the right tone. No, that's still no.
It's not as bad, right, as the tone thing.
If you say the right thing I think we need to do this grid. I'll do the infographic for it, but I think in the case of saying the right thing in the right tone but at the wrong time is actually positive. You can overcome the wrong time.
I think it's still going to be gauche. You're still going to get negative points. You're going to get nasty looks at it, I think. But not as bad as if you say it with the other things with the negative tone. Now, what if you say the wrong thing at the right time with the right tone? What's the wrong thing to say? Like, you're almost roasting the person in the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, like one of those really tone-deaf best man
Ben,
reception dinner speeches.
Oh, no. I'm just realizing that happened to me this week.
What?
A coworker of mine went out to lunch with me. He wanted to pick my brain on some things, and like we were just talking. This whole scenario was super weird because he came to my office the day before. He's like, "Hey, I want to go out to lunch with you sometime." And Ben, I got super awkward so fast. I was like, I normally have lunch by myself." And like that was the first thing that I said back to him. This nice.
That sounds like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory.
Well, and so this is the thing, is I recognize that I made it super awkward. Like, he even said, like, oh, I want to pick your brain about X, Y, and Z. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm on board. Let's get some lunch, because I needed the structure. I am deathly afraid of having to try to small talk with somebody that I barely know. That sounds like nails on a chalkboard to me. But give me a little bit
okay. So it was the right thing and the right tone, but the wrong time.
I'm not there. Okay. And so then we go out to this lunch, and I felt the need to explain to him. It's like, hey, just so you know, I realized it was super awkward when you approached me and asked me if I want to go to lunch. I have a bit of social anxiety. And so like the idea of an unstructured conversation with a person I don't know super well was really intimidating to me. And that's why I got so cagey about it. And he's like, oh, no, totally understand. I have the same kind of anxiety issues. I've been taking and he lists off a couple medications. Like I found this one on a low dose, whatever, is working great for me. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. I've been treating mine the old fashioned way, just with alcohol. And then Ben, his response
is he a recovered alcoholic?
I'm 16 years sober tomorrow.
Yes, saw that one coming.
Yeah,
okay.
So
I also had an awkward social interaction this week that was, let's see which one of these it was. It was the wrong thing at the right time and the right tone. So, and I know the ending of it. So here's what happened. We just had a meeting. The meeting was over. It was a Zoom call with the headquarters in Minnesota, where the senior vice president of security operations had notified the company after 5 years of the company he was leaving. Caught everyone off guard, flat-footed, sucked all the air out of the room. It was a big deal. After it got over, we were all having this moment as a company where we were literally doing a gut check. Like, are we going to be okay? Like,
oh, geez.
Is everything going to be all right? This guy that helped make this company what it is leaving next week. And during this brief discussion, maybe 10 minutes, it came my turn to speak. And I know you're going to roll your eyes at this, but for some reason, I just decided it was time to try to express confidence in the quality of the management team. So
God, you are such that guy. Don't worry, everyone. I'll stand up and we'll continue to sail.
So I started saying things about the people in the room. So-and-so's really good at this, and so-and-so's really good at that, and so-and-so's really good at that. And I was like Frodo naming the fellowship as they walked through the door. And I got to Legolas. And I was like,
oh, no. You were saying everybody in the room. This guy's fantastic. This guy. And also Bill is here for some reason.
I did this in real life. And the moment
that's fantastic. All I can see is the Starship Enterprise of your brain, where you're rattling off and oh, this is gold, and then they realize, sir, we've got a problem. The fourth guy in line, we've got nothing.
It's the scene from Star Trek 3 where they're flying the Klingon vessel, and the Klingons come on and talk to them, and they cut back to the bridge, and they're frantically looking through the dictionaries trying to find out how to answer them in Klingon. Yeah, like that.
Did it work? Did your ridiculous nonsense work out for you?
So I didn't have anything to say about him, and then it kind of moved on. If there was an awkward moment, it was brief. So today, after work, it was Friday afternoon before a 3-day weekend, and the place had kind of started to level out, and me and him were like the only two managers in the row.
Okay.
So he's 3 desks.
You got up and you brought him the home-baked brownies that you made the night before just for him.
So I went down there and I sat in the chair next to him and I said, hey, man, I need to talk to you about something. He's like, what? I was like, so remember in the meeting and the thing, and I did the thing? He's like, no, I don't remember that. And I didn't know if he was telling the truth. I didn't know if he's telling the truth or not. He might have been. I decided to plow ahead anyway. And I was like,
oh, you don't remember? There was this super awkward thing where I enabled everybody in the room except for you. You did it, didn't you?
I did. That's what I said.
Oh, my God. Ben, read the room. It's like, oh, okay, cool. No harm, no foul. See ya. Have a great weekend. Dude.
Yeah, no.
My guy.
Okay, but this is a point I'm trying to make. Right thing, right tone, wrong time, I guess. Maybe it was the wrong thing, right time. I don't know. One of those was wrong. I don't know which was wrong. So I said to him, well, look, man, not everybody contributes the same way. I was thinking about it after the fact, and here are the things I think that you're awesome at. And I tried to speak from my heart and tell the things I think he's good about. And he's like, thanks, man. Have a nice weekend. I was like, okay, and I bailed.
Everyone, listeners, we just heard somebody's villain origin story.
Yeah. All right. I need to make the infographic for this to really understand it. Oh, this is going to be great. All right. So what I did last time when we talked about acts of service, I'm going to do the same thing this time. I think if you say that your love language is words of affirmation, there's lots of different ways to express and consume words. So you could have the sharer, somebody whose way of expressing love is just by sharing. They want to have deep conversations. They want to talk about their emotions. They want to open up and say what they feel. They want to be vulnerable. That's one kind. If that's your person, let them be that. If that's you, yeah. I guess, find people that are into that.
Find people that will listen to you, just brain dump on them constantly.
These kind of people are usually good at empathizing. They make people that want that this is their love language feel warm and accepted. So
wait. Are they sharing? Are they just want to feel love by sharing their stuff and feeling heard? Or do they want, is it a back and forth?
I think there's a pair here and they aren't symmetrical, although they have an affinity for each other. Like you could have somebody that likes sharers but doesn't want to be one.
Okay, so that's a listener then.
Yeah, okay, so that's the second one. This is a listener. They let you talk. They do speak, but it's to reflect and to show understanding and to ask additional questions.
Ooh, that's a double-edged sword there, because I know a lot of people that you'll say something and they'll be like, yes, I have been listening this whole time. This is what you said, and pair it back to you something that is a Frankenstein monster of the information that you are trying to impart in that person.
That would be wrong thing at the right time in the right tone.
And that just makes me angry with this person.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Are you on the same
You're
planet?
off in the negative space, the hate
right.
language space.
You're right. You called it. That's perfect.
So I asked myself for a second, is being a listener, does that fall in the words of affirmation love language, or is that an act of service or quality time? And I don't think so. I think this falls in the words of affirmation space.
Well,
so
I'm with you, because I'm a words of affirmation guy. Like, I have a fragile ego, and I need my loved one to tell me from time to time that everything's going to be okay. And if she walls up or doesn't talk or just gets quiet, just not because she's upset with me, but she's just reading a book or just wants some alone time, I start to get nervous. Like it's like okay, like I feel some emotional distance here. And so even if it's not a two-way conversation, I just want I want that reinforcement that, like, okay, she is comfortable talking to me.
Okay, so my wife is a words of affirmation person, and last episode I recounted the story of us unpacking the kitchen together and how at some point I'd struck out 3 strikes in a row and she stormed off and left the kitchen. I didn't say what the strikes were, but they were words of affirmation strikes. When she came back to the kitchen, she said, about an hour ago when I asked you a question, you didn't answer me. That's what really set me off. So.
Ooh, yeah. You're not the listener.
I failed to reflect when I should have, or give a straight answer when she was asking a direct question. So
I remember. Hang on. Can I tell an anecdote real quick?
Sure.
There was a time back in the day when I was still single, and I had some very strange thoughts about relationships and having kids. And I was over at your house, and we were hanging out doing something. I remember you were showing me Netflix has this cool new streaming feature. And I'm like, that's never going to be a thing. And your wife came home from a shopping trip, and she had these bags, and she's like, look at these things that I purchased. And you just like were flat, just, yeah, sure. Not even looking at her, just 100% ignoring everything she was going to say. And man, I jumped down your throat because that's just the kind of jerk that I am. I'm like, your wife just wants to share an experience with you. Would you take 5 seconds out of your day to look and talk to her? And I did. I sat and looked at her like, that's very interesting. Where did you get that? Was it a good deal?
This is perfect feedback. So that's a great situation where my wife's love language is words of affirmation. She was seeking that from me. I needed to be a good listener at that point in time, and I wasn't. So we've got the sharer and the listener. The third category is the rememberer. This is a completely different one. I don't think it falls in any other spaces. This is the person who remembers your birthday, remembers your anniversary, remembers the things that you like, remembers your name, makes you feel important by remembering things about you. Falls in this space.
Ben, I would say 80% of the fights that I have with my wife are because I didn't remember something that she told me. And it's not, and I keep telling her, and I try to explain to her, it's not on purpose. It's that you talk to me all the time. And we talk all the time about everything. I need you to dog ear the crap that's important, or I'm just going to forget it.
Yeah, and so to her, whether or not you remember things is a measurement of your love.
You're right. That's exactly correct.
You may remember it at the wrong time. You have to remember it at the right time.
I have a bad at husbanding that touches on this topic, so we'll talk about that later.
Oh, great. My daughter is very keen on the rememberer. Words of affirmation, one of her love languages, and she wants her boyfriend to remember what food she likes, remember what restaurant she likes, remember what movies she likes, and then she only has to tell him that stuff once, and that is a measurement of your love for her. So, Zach, if you're listening, that's what you need to know about Kaya.
Called out by name. Wow. Zach.
I'll get to this later.
Ooh, is it Zach with a K or with a CH?
I don't actually know. So
is it two A's? Is there 2 A's in Zach?
I also don't know that. And
he sounds shady. I don't like him.
If someone's told me, I don't remember it because I'm not a rememberer. That's the third kind. Sharer, listener, rememberer. The fourth time is the writer. Some people really want words of affirmation expressed to them in writing. Notes, text, letters, cards, poetry. I'll add music to this category. Writing is a way you can magnify emotions with words because it's more refined than just speaking in the moment.
This feels like it's blending into almost acts of service types of thing because
or quality time.
Something, because you're going out of your way when the person isn't present to generate a loving message for them.
Or gifts.
Yeah. Like that, I don't know. It's a blend. I'll give it. It's a hybrid one.
Okay, but if they're like, why didn't you answer my text? Is that not words of affirmation?
Why didn't you answer? Is that writing, though? I mean, is that just conversation at this point?
Yeah, it's writing.
That's not writing. Text messages aren't writing.
Okay, so there was this movie back in the 80s called Roxanne starring Steve Martin. Did you ever see it?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't think so.
I think Roxanne's played by Daryl Hannah, and Steve Martin, the shtick of this whole movie is he has an enormous nose. And I mean enormous, like a human version of Pinocchio. It stands out like 4 inches from his face.
Oh, is this the remake of that? There's a Shakespearean play with the ugly guy feeding the good words to the handsome guy?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know it was a remake of a Shakespearean play, but you just described the plot of it.
Yeah, that's a thing.
And she doesn't love the handsome guy. She loves the words of affirmation coming from whatever Steve Martin's character was. I'm surprised you haven't seen it.
Well, but I knew it was based. I haven't seen it, but I knew it was based on. You've seen it. You didn't know what it was based on, so we're fine.
Okay.
Oh, here, it's Cyrano de Bergerac. Oh, it's a play by Edmund Rostand. It's not Shakespearean, but it's a good play. Cyrano.
Nice. Okay, but that's an example of writing being the love language.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Okay. And the last one I have is the complimenter. And maybe this is just another flavor of the others, but I was trying to come up with 5 to make it an even 5. The sharer, the listener, the rememberer, the writer, and the complimenter. Complimenter notices things about you and says them in the right time, in the right tone, and says the right thing.
Ooh, I say the right thing with the right tone at all the wrong times.
Compliment is a great example of this.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Because
if you get one of those 3 things wrong, it's going to be a fail.
Yeah. I try to compliment my wife at least 7 times a day. And I don't know, something about her generational trauma or whatever. She just does not like to be complimented. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it.
Okay, so that's saying the right thing in the right tone, and there's never a right time?
Or is it the right tone at the right time, but it's never going to be the right thing? One of those is permanently fixed on the bad scale.
I bet. Okay, some people have a preference among the love languages, but I think every person is susceptible to every love language. And I think every person, no matter how shy they think they are, how much they think they don't want compliments, has a kryptonite compliment, a compliment kryptonite. Something that you could say to them at the right time and the right tone that is exactly the kind of compliment that is that person's.
Well, we can say that about just words of affirmation in general. There is always going to be, I don't know, everything you do in your entire life is one version of a QuickTime event or another. And every once in a while, you can nail it absolutely perfectly, and it cuts through all the BS and is just the perfect thing that you could have done in that circumstance.
Yeah,
and
that doesn't happen very often, does it?
It really doesn't. But I think that applies to all of these languages. Like every stupid rom-com you've ever seen, there's always one redeeming act that the male lead performs that is absolutely perfect and nails all of the boxes.
Yeah, you're right. All those just played through my mind. Like the one at the end of Switch. Is it Switch, where Will Smith is like a relationship advice counselor? And she's like, this whole time it's all been an act. Everything you do has just been calculated, trying to get me to love you. And he's like, except for every time I tried one of those things, it failed with you and it went horribly wrong. And the only time I was just genuine and real with you, that's what worked.
Yeah, and that was exactly the right thing to say at the right time.
Yep. Okay.
I'm thinking of all the Hallmarky movies. Like, I told you not to come. I came anyway. And then they start making out, and then the music swells, and then it's the climactic end of the third act.
So what do I hope people take away from this discussion? I hope you realize maybe you can figure out whether your person wants if their love language is words of affirmation, whether they want sharing, listening, remembering, writing, or complimenting, and try to do them in the right time, in the right tone, and do the right thing.
When's the last time you looked your loved one in the eye and told them, honey, I can stand you for more than 15 minutes? Like, that's something so people just need to hear. Yeah. All right, Ben, this is too mushy. I have some fun things I want to talk about.
Cool, go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to start with some bad at parenting. So my son, famously, I forced him to do cross country last year, and he was mad at me for making him do it. But this year he volunteered and he wanted to do it because he recognized all the positive things that he got out of the experience. That made me feel good. Well, the cross country season is well and truly over, but the school started a running club. And this literally is just like, well, we want to keep the cross country kids in shape when we're not doing cross country. And it's open to a larger swath of the kids at the school. And so my daughter, who is going to be in 5th grade, she can do cross country next year. She's going to do cross country next year, but she is able to join the running club now. And so without consulting them, we signed them both up because, yay verily, kids, like we talk about this all the time. We're going to keep you guys active because we're all 4 of us in our house. We're natural couch potatoes. And so we have to go out of our way to do things that are healthy because that's important for our bodies.
Okay. Like you guys are doing the Zoo 5K tomorrow.
We are doing the Zoo 5K tomorrow. That's why we're recording on Friday night instead of Saturday night.
Nice.
And that's something we do every year, and it's going to be fun, and there's going to be a new route, and we're probably not going to run the whole thing because our kids are way out of shape.
Hopefully you aren't doing the like back and forth through the tensile barriers in the parking lot.
You see, Ben, you're a listener and a rememberer, because that's incredibly impressive that you remember. Yes, it was switchbacks in the parking lot last year.
Yeah.
It was terrible. Anyway, we signed both of our kids up for the run club, and the first meeting was yesterday. It was Thursday morning before school. And so it was perfect because my wife dropped my kids off at school. Then I picked them up she dropped them off at before care, and I picked them up from after care. And so my wife is dropping off the kids, and she tells the before care teacher, oh, by the way, I'm signing them in, but they both need to leave in about half an hour to go to the run club. And the before care teacher goes, oh, Jane's going running too? And then before my wife gets to respond, Jane over the top goes, yes, I'm being forced to go, and I wasn't consulted on the decision.
I love it when kids say precocious things like that. She decided this was her moment to protest.
Yeah, apparently, or just be passive aggressive or a drama llama about it. I'm not sure.
That's awesome.
So my wife texted me that, and yeah, I laughed because, like, no, you didn't get a say in it, 10-year-old girl. Haha, sucks to be you. But then I picked them up from school, and like one of the things about this is it needs to be a positive experience, right? It's hard. Running sucks. Nobody likes to run, but it has to be a positive experience. You have to attach positive feelings to this thing that's hard to do, or else you won't ever do it.
Right.
And so when I'm picking them up from school, my son walks home from school, so I'm just picking up my daughter. And I get her, I'm like, hey, how was Run Club this morning? Was it super awesome? Did you know any people there? And her response was, completely unironically, it was absolutely dreadful.
She's Napoleon Dynamite. Worst day of my life. What do you think?
Essentially, yeah. And so that was just more reinforcement. I think I'm raising an over-the-top, dramatic... I'm just calling her a drama llama. She's a drama llama.
Okay. She's going to have a moment. Maybe she'll... If you force her to do the thing the whole year, she'll do the whole year and hate it the whole year. But she's going to have a moment somewhere where something lights up her panel. You know, like she has a small success or something that interests her, and you'll be looking for that, I assume.
Oh, I am. All right, so this is actually one of the things on my bingo card for 2025. My son and I, we have a ritual. We go to Friday Night Magic 50-ish% of the time together, and it's a thing that we do together. We talk about it. We go there. We talk about it on the way home. It's
right.
It's
so
us.
You've been looking for something for you and her.
Yes, and I realize that that's lacking for her, and I don't want to seem like I'm more into my son than I am into my daughter, because I don't want that to be a sibling rivalry thing.
Good on you for making the effort to recognize that it's harder, but you're still trying to do it.
I'm trying to find something. I'm on the active hunt for something that I can do, and my daughter and I can share like that. And it could be a hobby. It could be a thing that we go do.
Probably not going to be running.
Probably won't be running. This is why I sent you some pictures via text. I spent all day last Saturday making a yarn ball.
Learning to crochet.
Oh, learning to crochet, yes. But step one was like, okay, turn your yarn into a yarn ball. Like, okay, well, the cats had gotten into this yarn. And I am not exaggerating when I say it took my wife and I 4 full hours to untangle this thing and turn the yarn into a yarn ball.
Holy cow. What series did you watch while you were making the yarn bowl?
We were watching all the football games that were on last Saturday, Ben. There was 3 wild card games back to back to back.
Fun. All right, well, I hope you find your thing, Josh. That's a great goal for 2025.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, I also had a bad parenting segment, but I want to couch this one a little bit different. Instead of being a specific bad parenting segment, even though it was, because I hinted at it earlier, I want to start off by generalizing it. Josh, I want you, without me trying to seed your brain too much, I want you to give me your understanding of the cultural ritual of the teenage boy coming to pick up your daughter for a date.
Okay. So, the ritual... All right, so I had a younger sister, okay? And so I was a part of this ritual. But my sister is the youngest of 3 siblings, and so my parents had completely given up at the point where she was becoming an adult. And
she had the baby child immunity.
It was really on me and my brother to do that thing. And so my understanding of the ritual, which I upheld my end because I'm a jerk, is you're supposed to put the fear of God into that young man. It's And it's because we've all been there. As men, we have been in a situation where I'm 17, I am dating this girl, and it's like, it's a facade. It's the thinnest veneer of
You're Eddie
cultural
Haskell from
acceptability.
Leave It to Beaver, where you're putting on a really nice face in front of the grown-ups, but that's not what really is going on.
It's a badly constructed beaver dam of good manners that's holding back an enormous lake of hormones and sexual desire. And so the idea is you want to reinforce that beaver dam with some fear.
That was a really good metaphor. No, wait. So you're telling me your dad just completely abdicated this, so you decided... Did he ask you to pick up the torch?
He didn't completely abdicate, but I definitely picked it up kind of hard because I remember... All right, so here's a quick anecdote. Apologies to everyone involved. My sister brought her boyfriend at the time to dinner at our house with me, my brother, my parents, her, and him. And I love this story so much. We were all at the table, and it was just this lull in the conversation. Everybody was just, it was quiet. All you can hear is forks hitting plates for a second. And I go, so what are your intentions with my sister? And then
you used the word intentions.
Yes, I did. And the kid just goes bright red and is staring at his plate. But my sister goes, Mom! And my mom goes, Tim! Which is my dad's name. My dad goes, actually, yeah, what are your intentions with my dad?
Nice. Tag teamed him.
And so then my sister yells at my mom and my dad, who my mom is yelling at my dad. My dad's defending himself, and I just keep eating with a smile on my face for, let's call it 90 seconds. And then it goes quiet again. And then my brother, I don't know if he intended this, but out of, like, in the next silence, he sighs heavily, goes, I miss your old boyfriend.
Oh, snap.
Oh, and it was just so perfect.
Okay, Josh, so you told me you understand what you had this understanding of what it was you were supposed to do, which is recognize that this boy has the beaver dam that needs to be shored up, and you're helping him with fear. Why did you know that?
Man, I don't know how. Well, all right. So I think it was a subconscious understanding because I was at that same point. Like, I knew what I wanted to do with all of my girlfriends, and I realized, oh, this kid wants to do the same thing, but this is my sister.
To my sister.
And as the male family member, I guess it's kind of my role to what, defend her virtue. I don't know. This is harking back to Bridgerton type nonsense, I guess.
And that's kind of what I'm asking. This is a cultural meme that we have, and it's very reinforced in society. I just wrote an essay about it. I think I'll publish it. I think I'll publish it. But
I'm sorry, hang on.
Here's the problem.
No, you don't get to skip this. You wrote an essay on social virtuosity for what? What are you talking about?
It's the title of the essay is "Cleaning My Gun." The lyrics are from a country song by Rodney Atkins, and the chorus of this song is about, it goes, "Come on in, boys, sit right down. Tell me about yourself. Do you like my daughter? We think she's something else. You guys go along and have a good time. I'll be up all night cleaning this gun."
Fantastic. How many words is this essay?
It's 3 pages.
Okay, justified? Single space, double space? What are we talking about?
I don't know. It's 17,000. It's 1,700 words.
Oh, okay. So like a weekend paper.
Yeah. Here's why I don't need to get to why I was writing an essay. But
you're taking a creative
I'm not taking classes. No, I'm not taking classes or anything like that.
You wrote an essay for no reason.
There's kind of okay. I'll tell you the reason. My daughter-in-law is in her senior year of getting her degree in writing, and occasionally to connect with her, just like the same way you're talking about, you spent 4 hours untangling yarn.
Yeah,
I spent some time writing an essay to connect with my daughter-in-law.
Aw, Ben, that's weird.
So she asked me to write about my daughter, and I didn't have anything interesting to say, and then I realized I did, and this was the thing. Back in COVID, my daughter was a senior in high school. She didn't have prom. She was on quarantine. She was in lockdown. Sucks. She didn't have her graduation ceremony, and somehow she ended up leaving my house I know the reasons, but through a series of unfortunate events, she left my house without ever bringing home a boyfriend.
Yeah, that sucks.
So I never had this thing happen where you go through the ritual of her bringing a guy in the house. But I'd always thought about it because I'd seen it in the movies. It was in Clueless. It was in the Goofy movie. It was in Bad Boys 2. It's in the country song. It's all over the place.
Of course.
And it's this really interesting cultural artifact that's passed down not from father to son, but from father of a daughter to her boyfriend. It's from a male to a stranger male.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that.
I can't think of anything else like this. It gets passed down quite like that. As far as I know, you wouldn't give this lecture to your son. You give it to the guy that wants to get with your daughter.
I think this is something everybody experiences, but I don't. I don't know. I want to argue with your premise, but I'm not. You cook. You do your thing over there.
Okay, so I started looking at all these depictions of it, and I'd absorbed them as a kid, not really understanding it from the boy's perspective, like since earlier than before I was even horny. Like, why is this man threatening this boy with death for dating his daughter? This is how the world works.
Yeah, but then you learned about sex, oh, that's why.
I got older and I understood the beaver thing, and the way that the Rodney Atkins country song goes is he says, I can't remember the Declaration of Independence. I can't remember how to do algebra, but I'll tell you one thing I do remember. I remember the first time I went over to pick up my girlfriend, and her dad sat me down and told me this while he was polishing his gun, and then he sings the chorus. And then he says, now I'm grown and married, and I have my own daughter, and the boy shows up, and I remember this lecture clear as day, and it's my turn to deliver it.
Okay, I'm with you.
So I was thinking about this, and my daughter, who's away at college, wants to come home for the weekend and bring her boyfriend with her. Now, this is slightly different. This changes the cultural landscape because she's not a dependent child living in my house. I'm not supposed to be screening this guy. She's an adult woman that's already made her decision, and something else is happening.
Yeah, this is not do you approve of this guy? This is a guy that is right now. Be okay with it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so I realized I just kind of missed my chance, at least with this child. I got 2 more daughters to give it a chance, I guess, if I get my chance. But I decided young that I wasn't going to polish my gun. I've never been in favor of making empty threats. And I wouldn't,
hang on.
There's nothing.
Empty threat. You wouldn't murder a guy that treated your daughter wrong? I would 100% murder a guy for treating my daughter badly.
That's the thing. Okay, so I'll put a link in the show notes, but I got to give the most extreme content warning I can possibly give. There is a mean-spirited version of this in Bad Boys 2, where a boy shows up to the door to date Martin Lawrence's 15-year-old daughter, and he pulls him in and frisks him, and then Will Smith comes out and throwing F-bombs and the N-word and threatening this kid and points a gun at his head. And he's 15, and the whole time he's meek and calm and laid back, and they're just laying into this kid.
Yeah, they play that up for laughs.
You remember the scene?
I remember the scene, and thinking back on it, that didn't age well. You can't threaten people with guns. Yeah,
you're right. It did not age well. And that's what I was thinking of. Like, I don't want to do this, so what do I want to say? What does my version of Rodney Atkins, polishing, cleaning my gun sound like if my daughter's boyfriend comes over?
I expect that you're going to make a lot of decisions, and maybe they're good, maybe they're not. I don't know. I made a lot of bad decisions when I was a kid, but I hope that in the moment that you're making those bad decisions, that you make good choices about those decisions.
Yeah, well said. Another thing about life is sometimes it throws these moments into our path before we've had time to think them through, and we're ready to give something profound, and we just do the best we can in the moment. And maybe that's the time when you actually find out what it is you think.
So the speech that I give my daughter is very different than the speech I give the boyfriend. The daughter gets the whole, I trust you and I respect you and you make the best decisions for you, but understand that some of these things can have consequences that will last the rest of your life, and just be ready to deal with those, and I will help you through anything that does happen. And then I look at the boy and I say, this is 100% your fault. I don't care. She's my girl. And I listen to a lot of true crime. There's no way they're finding your body.
Yeah, that's the Clueless version of the speech.
That is the Clueless
Hey,
version.
you, anything happens, I got a 45 and a shovel. I doubt anyone would miss you.
No. You see, you got muriatic acid in the big totes from Home Depot. There won't even be body parts.
Right. You had a bad at husbanding segment for us?
So, all right, this goes back to our remembering thing, okay? So, my wife is a quality time and an acts of service person. And so she wants me to sit with her on the couch and scroll through TikTok. And she wants me to do things for her. And this is why I do a lot of laundry in our house. But yesterday, so Thursday, this is a standard thing, is I get home from work and I immediately have to turn around and take the kids out to Krav Maga. Like we have Krav Maga. We're going to teach these kids to defend themselves from bodily harm. My son just needs to be active. My daughter might actually need those skills someday because it sucks, but she's going to be a woman in America, so she's going to need to know how to kill somebody at the drop of a hat.
So that her dad doesn't have to threaten her boyfriends with a gun.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's like, I'm not going to give you this speech. My daughter's got a black belt in Krav Maga. She will literally rip your head off.
That's the 21st century version of that country song.
That is the 20. All right. So,
hey, son, how's it going?
Before I leave,
my daughter can kill you.
As I'm getting ready to go, because I take this opportunity to run. You find these little moments, right? My kids are going to be occupied for 45 minutes. That's 45 minutes that I can do something for myself. So I run while they're in Krav Maga. And so I'm getting all of my gear on. And my wife is like, I don't know why, but I have been craving chocolate just ridiculously all day. Do not buy me chocolate. Those are the words that she said to me.
Oh man. Okay, let's go back to our intensity metric we created earlier. Like, are you this is the right thing, wrong time, or wrong thing, right time problem?
And exactly. And so she tells me, like, I've been craving chocolate all day. I want chocolate. Do not buy me chocolate. I don't want chocolate, but I want chocolate. Don't buy me chocolate.
Woof.
And so I'm just like,
why did she tell you that? Are you supposed to get her chocolate or not? I don't know what to do. You're giving me anxiety by proxy, Josh.
I defaulted to the computer science thing. The last instruction I was told was do not buy her chocolate.
That can't have been right.
Oh God. All right. So Ben, I did not buy her chocolate, even though I had every opportunity because I had all this time. So
she dropped the hint so hard, Josh.
She told me not to explicitly, Ben. So I didn't.
You bonehead.
I come home from Krav Maga and like we're doing our decompression thing. We all have dinner and we're watching TV. The kids are alternating showers and doing the dishes. And she looks over at me during the show and she goes, I am like, thank you, but I'm just a little disappointed you didn't come home with any chocolate.
Aww.
Ben, I got off of the couch. I put my shoes on. I put my keys in my pocket and I left the building in that minute. Within 60 seconds of her saying that, I was out the door and on my way to the grocery store.
This is really interesting.
I bought a fun size Butterfinger, a bag of fun size Butterfingers, fun size Snickers, and fun size Twix. They only had the right ones. They didn't have the left ones. I like the left ones better. And then I told myself I was walking in there, I'm not going to buy anything for myself because I don't need anything. But then right across from the candy was the Chips Ahoy cookies. I'm like, you got me again, grocery store. And so I had cookies and milk. But I got all of that and I came back and I came home and I was gone for some total of 10 minutes. Okay. And I came back into the house. She's like, where did you go? I thought you were in the bathroom. And I set down this bag and I pulled out the 3 bags of chocolate. And she was mad at me. Like, why did you buy me chocolate?
This is just a great example of right thing, wrong time, wrong thing, right time. You did both. You did both within 20 minutes.
I did both of the things. I didn't buy her chocolate. I bought her chocolate and I was wrong both times.
Yeah. Sorry. If there was an implicit request for advice there for me to help you with this dilemma, I don't. No, I just thought. Sorry.
So, all right. So, real talk for a second. This is a funny anecdote because of the things that she said, but I know this sounds so stupid. She appreciated me not buying her the chocolate, even though that she wanted it because she knows that's me trying to help her with all of her goals and aspirations. And then she also, even though she cussed me out, appreciated me leaving the house to go buy her the thing that she kind of wanted at the drop of a hat.
Okay, so back to your intensity metric. This is interesting because there is the right intent overriding the right tone overriding both.
Ben, we can't do a 4-axis chart because I can't visualize that.
All right.
We can't have a hypercube Venn diagram. That's just not a thing.
What are you reading right now, Josh?
Oh, Ben, I am reading the 4th book of the Stormlight Archive series. This is Rhythm of War. This is only my second read through of this book, and so I'm finding that while I remember the major story points, I missed a lot of the details are just very fuzzy in my mind. It's been several years since I've read it, and
this is the fourth book.
This is the fourth book, and I'm pushing through because the fifth book came out back in December, and so I'm really excited about listening to the fifth book. I'm avoiding all the spoilers and everything that people are putting on social media, so I'm really excited to listen to it. And listening back to this one, okay, so one of the interesting things that Brandon Sanderson decided with this magic system, he calls it, in general, it's called investiture. You have to have the power has to get in you, and then you can manifest it in different ways, okay? But in order for the magic or the investiture to get in you in the first place, your soul has to be cracked in order to allow it in. And so everybody that's manifesting these things are broken in one way or another. And it's usually, in this series, it's manifesting as like different flavors of mental illness. Okay. So one of our main protagonists, Kaladin. I love Kaladin. Read the word. Say the words, Kaladin. He has depression. Like, he has actual depression. Like, you should be on medication and suicide watch sometimes level depression. Okay. But in this storyline, they're in kind of a feudal medieval tech level kind of society. And so he has, in this book, they've been at war for like a year now, and he's a high marshal, a field marshal of their armies, and he's constantly fighting, and he's finding himself locking up in some situations. Like, he has such bad PTSD from certain situations that he just shuts down. And so his commanding officer pulls him off of active duty. He's like, you've got to take a rest. We're going to actively retire you. Go find something else to do, because we can't have you doing this out in the field. And like, so he goes back to like his medical roots, and he's trying to be a doctor the way that his dad is, and his dad is so proud of him, blah, 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 all these things. Well, series of events, he finds out that the way at the time that people deal with mental illness is they don't have any idea how to deal with mental illness. So they turn them over to the clergy. And the clergy is just like locking them in dark rooms by themselves. It's like, well, we don't want them to like make each other worse or make each other more suicidal. And we don't want to stimulate them like at all. So we just keep the lights off and we feed them and we just keep them in these rooms. And that's how they're treating all of these mentally unstable people.
This feels like really fertile ground for a fantasy universe. And I'm surprised I've never seen it before, but I haven't.
Well, and so Kaladin shows up and he's freaking out. Like, I could have been one of these people. You can't lock them in here. I know what they're going through. This is the worst thing you can do for them. And he takes one guy, like, just as like against the will of the dude who's running this place, and he like pulls him out into like a balcony and just kind of like starts talking to him about his feelings and about how like, oh yeah, do you feel this way? Have you experienced this? Like, yeah, I've been there, and like pulls this guy out of his shell. And the religious clergy member is like, this is incredible. I've never seen anything like this before. Yeah, and so I saw this on social media and I love it so much. And like, somebody said Kaladin needed therapy so bad that he had to invent it. And that's really what this chunk of the story was. Yeah.
I was talking to my wife this week. We were listening to a podcast together, and they interviewed like 3 different doctors in a row, and they'd all had a similar version of a story to that, where like they'd had some issue or problem in their life or with one of their loved ones, so they became the expert in it and invented some new therapy or treatment or way to deal with it. And I think that happens a lot. Where like, who else is going to care enough about something and know enough about it to invent it, but the people who are suffering either first or second person?
Well, and that's the thing, just with all of these fields, right? You have to be, in order to, human knowledge has grown to a point where all of the low-hanging scientific fruit have been picked. They were all picked, like, I feel like in the early 1900s, when you could go down to the corner store and get raw, like arsenic.
When they closed the patent office, they're like, that's it. We got all the easy stuff. Close the patent office.
Back when mathematicians were like, oh, you know what? If we just put gin in this waveguide, that'll delay it for a tenth of a second. You're laughing like
you didn't know we actually did that. You know we did that like in 1910, right?
I did not know we shut down the...
Yeah, they closed the U.S. Patent Office. They're like, that's it. We invented all the good stuff.
We're full. It's done. Nothing else needs... There's no more new stuff.
Congratulations, everybody.
We did it. We accomplished it. The peak of human history. Well, but anyway, like... my original point, like, we're beyond that. There is no low-hanging scientific fruit that doesn't exist. And so if you want to push the boundaries of human understanding, it's not just about capacity, it's about drive. Like, you can be the smartest guy in the world, but man, you still got to run super hard to get to the fringe of our understanding of things.
Okay. I want to talk about my book. I'm not finished with it, and I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
Whoa. Okay, in a good way or a bad way? Like, it's so moving that I can't talk about it? Or did you just read, like, the first 3 pages and you don't want to even give us the title?
I'm well into it. All right, I'll talk. So I was listening to the Freakonomics podcast, one of their spin-off podcasts by the economist, not the journalist, Stephen Levitt, who's a professor of economics at the University of Chicago, and he has a interview show he does now that's called People I Mostly Admire. And he was interviewing the woman who is the professor that's the head of the design department at Stanford University.
The head of the design department at Stanford?
Design, like making things, creative thinking, design.
Okay.
Her name is Sarah Stein Greenberg. And she was a fantastic guest, just really insightful. Basically, design is one of those fields where, like, it encompasses everything.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It encompasses everything from, like the design of a ride at Disneyland to the design of the phone you're holding in your hand to the design of the layout of the different booths in a theme park or whatever.
Give you some feedback. Something like this, when you're trying to do all encompassing, stick with one theme and then just pick little things in the theme. Like everything from like the line at the ride at Disneyland to the seats in the ride at the Disneyland to the characters on the side of the ride at that Disneyland.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But in the book, it encompasses everything else. Like one of the anecdotes she tells is about people, loved ones waiting in clogging up hospitals in India, and something they designed to help with them. Just everything. So I was really interested in hearing her, and he'd mentioned her book. It was called Creative Acts for Curious People. And you know that I made a resolution a while back to try to read more books by women. So I was like, well, that sounds like a good book by a woman I'd be interested in. So I put it in my queue. I finished the last book about the gulags in the Soviet Union, and I threw that one in the queue and I put it in. The problem is this book is almost written to be like a text for people that were interested in replicating some of the design exercises they do for students at Stanford.
So it's like a textbook.
Yes. It's 60 different activities to have people do. Like, for instance, take 2 people and have them stare at each other from across the room. Set a timer for 2 minutes and have one person look at the other person and draw their face without lifting their pen from the pad and without ever looking down at what they're drawing. And then in the end, look at it and show it to the other person and think about what you thought about and talk to the person and stuff like that. And it just describes all this.
Okay.
That part's not great reading.
Oh, I guess. Are you doing the activities, though?
I've done 1 or 2 of them. They're designed for be like facilitated by like a teacher teaching a class to do these things.
Does she discuss the activities like after
yes,
you're supposed to
she
done?
gives anecdotes and she talks about times that it worked and stuff. So I'd say it's about 50% of a readable book and 50% of like a reference text.
Those are tough. Every once in a while, because Mr. Nonfiction over here, that's going to happen sometimes. You know what? You know what, Ben? None of my fiction books have ever given me homework.
Okay, well, if I start talking in a weird way and you feel like you're doing an exercise from Stanford University, you'll know why. Okay, Josh, I got a quick board game survivor for you. So this past week was my son Jairus' birthday, and for his birthday we got him an expansion of one of his favorite board games. The game is called Zoo King. I want to recommend this highly to anyone. It's a very familiar form. It's just one of those games where you have an objective and you're all like drafting from a common deck of known cards that are exhibits and animals, but the theme facilitates it. So it's a fun, really accessible version of this game, which is just you have 2 to 5 players sitting around drafting until one of you achieves the maximum amount of victory points and wins the game. But in this case, you're trying to make a zoo. So you're picking animals, you're hiring staff, you're building support facilities, you're interacting with the other players, there's publicity, and it all sounds really complicated, but it's just so fun to make a zoo. Like, is your zoo going to be all jungle animals? Are you going to try to have different areas of like, these are savanna animals, these are jungle animals, these are desert animals? And it's just, the cards are cute, it's fun, it all fits in a tiny little box, tons of fun, highly recommend Zoo King.
It's got 7.4 on Board Game Geek. Overall rating is about 10,000. 2 to 4 players, 30 minutes, ages 10 and up.
And 7.4 is pretty high rating. All right, Josh, for our main segment today, I want to revisit something we did on episode 2 of the Bad at Magic podcast. Episode 2.
Wait. Episode 1 was we recorded live at Vegas, and we talked about how you were terrible at magic and how I'm a sucker for anime art. What did we talk about episode 2?
So you're right to want to contextualize this, and here's how I'll put it in a historical context. I had something in my soul that I wanted to put out into the ether that was waiting until just after we got this thing going.
You needed a vehicle. Like
yes.
This seed was just looking for fertile soil, and you've been carrying it for too long.
And, if you've joined the podcast recently and you haven't gone back and listened to our hundreds of hours of content, you probably haven't made it back to episode 2. For anyone that hasn't heard it, I'll give you a quick recap. I want to talk about what I call my unified parenting theory.
Oh, the unified parenting thing. Yes, this is the tiers. This is the annual formal feedback that you give your kids every year. You tell them what tier they're at and how they can achieve their goals next year.
Yes. And the reason I call it my unified parenting theory is because I think it encompasses everything. When you think of parenting, you can think of all the little tiny things inside of it. Teaching them to learn to talk and walk, potty training, household chores, personal hygiene, cooking, schooling, relationships, sports, jobs, college admission, becoming an adult, learning to drive, all those kinds of things, all those fall within the parenting. I wanted to come up with a theory that encompassed all of that.
You know what, Ben? This is like you're treading this ground, and it's there's pathways in my brain that are lighting up like, oh yeah, we did talk about this. I know because this is a well-trod path in my brain. Because you're saying all these specific things, and I remember saying this because I wanted to say it just now, and I'm going to say it again. As long as they're alive to 18, that's a win. You're done. You did it.
You're right. This is one of those predictable things that if 100 times we rewound the universe and I said those same words to you, you would say that same thing.
I would say that 100 times. Listen, they just got to be alive.
Okay, so I think my unified parenting theory transcends any single task or value or system. And I came upon it almost by accident. But the reason I want to revisit it, because this is all in the recording, I could just rebroadcast episode 2, is because I also think I didn't realize that as I developed this theory and utilized it and had some kids grow up and leave home, it was also changing me. And I want to talk about the change that happened to me.
Oh, it's the unified parenting theory.
Okay.
Wait, that's what you called it. Like, no, this is the unified parent theory. This unified child therapy theory. I don't know. There's a reciprocal effect here.
So here's a quick recap of what it was. For some reason, when I had tiny kids, I was teaching them to obey me. And we came up with a little call response that we had. I would tell them what to do, and then they would have to say yes, Daddy, and then do it. And
yes,
cheekily, they would say to me, yes, Daddy, and do it. And I thought that was it. Until one day, my oldest child said, yes, Daddy, and did it, and I still felt dissatisfaction in my soul.
And the idea with that one is the level 2 is that I want you to do the thing. Or what was level 2 is either recognizing the thing needs to be done and you do it without being told, or is it like recognizing the thing needs to be done and then doing some more?
Yes. Level 2 is what else can I do to help? So, yes, Daddy, and do it. What else can I do to help? And that's recognizing that they can be a helper and they have something to offer. They're not just learning to mind me.
Like, this is something I'm struggling with my kids right now because they do the dishes. We tell our kids, you will do the dishes. And I am still fighting with them like, hey, doing the dishes, I need you to look around, okay? I need you to take the blinders off, not just clean the dishes out of the sink and put them in the dishwasher and walk away. I need you to look around the kitchen. Like, is there dirty? Is there things there that shouldn't be there? Is there trash that's left on the table? So
what you're describing is level 3. Which is find something that needs to be done and do it.
Okay.
And again, I had the same moment. I taught my kid to say, yes, Daddy, and do it. And that wasn't enough. And then I taught them to say, what else can I do to help? And I realized that wasn't enough either. I want them to be independent. I want them to recognize the best kind of help that isn't asked for. Use their decision-making, their critical thinking, their human body to be contribute without me being involved all the time. And it's an additional level of maturity beyond just doing what you're told.
I hate that you're saying these things and I'm recognizing examples of it happening in my own household just because I don't want you to be right because In my mind, we have an antagonistic relationship, even though that's not true.
It's good. It makes for good listening. And then the fourth level isn't really a level. It's level 3, but without the parent present. It's you know what to do. Now you have self-determination. Go out and do it on your own based on your own goals.
This is when you come home from a date night with your wife and the kids have a load of laundry going. You're like, what are you doing? Like, well, I had a bunch of dirty clothes and I needed to wash them. And then you just weep in gratitude and pleasure.
Yes. And level 4 is where you really find out who they are. Like when they aren't trying to work your priorities and they're making their own decisions about what they want and what they think the world should be. And like you said, if it's something good, you're very happy about that. The uncomfortable thing is, what if it isn't something you would have them do? Then how do you feel about it?
Then you get to wash your hands of it like, well, they're their own person. They're going to go make their own mistakes.
Yeah. So that's my unified parenting theory. At each level, I was dissatisfied because I felt like that wasn't enough. I wanted them to learn obedience, and then I wanted them to learn awareness, and then I wanted them to learn responsibility, and then they can have self-determination.
Okay. Yes, the 4 levels. And how did these change you as you were going through this, Ben?
So that applied to everything. Learning to talk, potty training, driving, cooking, schooling, relationships, all that kind of stuff.
Those are way out of order. Way out of order.
I was just making a random list. That was a good tip you gave earlier. I'm still thinking about it. My overall intent was just to be able to recognize where they were at with any of those small things, which level they were at and where I wanted them to be and what I needed to do. And on episode 2, I talked about some of the very specific strategies we used of rewards and punishments and incentives and reinforcements to try to get them to go to the next level.
Okay.
At the highest level, the things are their own rewards.
Well, oh, yeah. It's like doing your laundry means you get to have clean clothes. Like
right. That's Instead of doing your laundry means your mom isn't going to be mad at you.
Yes. It's like I'm doing my laundry because I was told to do my laundry. I am doing my laundry because it needs to be done. I am doing my laundry because I appreciate the feel of fabric softener on my skin.
Yeah, great. Exactly. And you described level 1 and then level 4, which is self-actualization. Like and it's hard to instill a kid a desire to have clean laundry. They're like, what do I want clean laundry for? You're the one that wants clean laundry.
Oh, and the problem is, it's the jacket problem. It's like, hey, it's cold outside. Wear a jacket. I don't want to wear a jacket. It's cold outside. Whatever. I'll suffer. And so you can't allow a kid to develop self-actualization by letting them suffer with dirty clothes, because it is still your responsibility to send them to school not looking like Pigpen from Charlie Brown. They have to be clean and well and dressed.
I love that this random example that you threw in is really proving the overall thing that's happening here, which is the unified parenting theory is that you want them to develop self-actualization. But in the complexity of that, you have to deal with it every time it comes up. Like, I can see my kids about to stick a fork in the power outlet. Do I want this to be a learning moment of the kind where I'm teaching them something about the universe?
I think we talked about that on episode 2. The idea is that being a bad parent is easy because you just go hands off. Being a good parent is hard because you've got to be on 24/7.
Kinda. So I realized there was some common ground here with all parents, which is we're all just making this up as we go along. No exceptions. Everybody. Like, there are no parenting experts. There's no manual. There's no way to know whether or not you did the right thing. Sometimes people that are bad parents accidentally do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day.
And sometimes people that are trying as hard as they can to do the right thing no matter what really freaking screw it up.
Oh, the people that are trying really hard all the time are the ones that get talked about in therapy.
I read this great article in the Atlantic by this woman that was she'd recently moved to the United Kingdom when the COVID lockdown happened, and she was locked in the house with 3 small kids all day and was going freaking crazy. But she'd come from the parenting school where she wanted to control everything. She wanted to control their diet. She wanted to control their friends. She wanted to make sure they were learning and had tutors and went to all the activities. And all of a sudden, all that got taken away from her. And all she could think of was, I need to get away from these kids. So the law at the time for COVID allowed them to have a partnership with another family that was screened where they could trade babysitting.
Yeah, you could do the what is that? They had a word for this where you quarantine groups or
it was a quarantine group.
Yeah, okay.
So she called up some people she barely knew in a country she hadn't even lived in for a year, and was like, "We need to do this quarantine group thing. I'm going crazy with these kids in the house."
Hey, I know you barely know me, but I'm going to commit bodily harm to minors. I need you to take them off my hands.
So she did this thing that she otherwise would not have done had it not been for COVID, because she was very committed to the modern parent thing.
Okay.
And what she was describing in this piece, I'll put a link in the show notes, is that she had this epiphany that she had created, and they added some other families later on, and created this very consistent thing of trading babysitting. And it was very low key, as in, like, on that night they have them. I don't care what they're having for dinner. I just send them over there and I don't think about them. I'm not making them if you hire a babysitter, you bring them into your house and you tell them what your rules are, and you expect the babysitter to enforce your rules.
Wait, hang on a second. You do?
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
You say, I'd like... they can stay up until 8, and then it's time for bed. They need to brush their teeth, put on their pajamas, say their prayers, and get in bed. Make sure all that happens, and the babysitter says yes and agrees to do it.
Ooh,
right?
I'm doing babysitting wrong, because babysitter comes like, all right, there are the kids. Here's our phone number. If they're alive when they get back, we'll give you an extra tip.
Okay, well, this kind of person, that's the way they do babysitting.
Okay.
And she said in this arrangement, it takes a village arrangement with all this babysitting cooperative, they didn't do that. And it wasn't just because they didn't. It's what made it work. It's what made it low key. It's what made it feel comfortable. And then they had these really deep and abiding relationships with these other families. And she said whenever they came, there was a running joke that whenever they came to my house, I fed them pasta. And I think she meant it kind of cheekily that was unhealthy food. But
there's a whole country in...
When her kids were at their house, they followed that house's rules and did what that house was doing, not what she wanted. And she said, in relinquishing the control, I got something I didn't know I'd been missing. This community of people cooperating.
Aw.
And the point I was making is that there's no parenting manual. We're all just making it up. And sometimes in doing less, you're actually doing more. And that was the point she was making. She thought she was being the perfect parent by doing everything. But when forced to do less, it actually got better.
I want to make a snarky comment. Like, I know what I'm doing when it comes to parenting, like just some flippant comment, but I've had way too many bad parenting segments on this podcast to make that joke.
Yeah. So another thing I think that unifies us in this parenting theory, we're all making it up as we go along. And the other is we don't want to have to face our mistakes, and we want to get credit for our victories.
This is what I said earlier.
Which is kind of a double standard.
No, not at all. This is when it's your kids, you have this opportunity. I said this earlier in this podcast. When your kid is an amazing, upstanding citizen, you get to point at them like, see, credit for it. Look what I did. Look what I accomplished in raising this paragon of humanity.
Up and make stupid choices, you could be like, they're their own person.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, here's the other side of the 4 phases. So I've had roughly half of my 6 kids leave the house in the last 5 years since I told you about my unified parenting theory, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. You
wouldn't change a thing about them leaving the house? Yeah.
No, I wouldn't change a thing about the theory, which is that, yes, I want them to grow from learning obedience to learning involvement to learning responsibility to being self-actualized. Saying yes and do it, what's the point of obedience? Why do we... There's so many battles I fought over obedience that I look back and I'm like, why did I fight about whether or not they ate their dinner? Why did I fight about what clothes they wear? Why did I fight about whether they should wear a jacket when it's cold out?
Obedience is important at the lowest level because without obedience, they're feral animals. And you have to, obedience sets the precedent for all of the other lessons that you want them to learn. They have to respect and listen to you before you can inject any more information into their stupid squirrel brains.
Okay, but what if you're wrong? What if you're making them listen to you and you just were wrong? Here's a great example.
I had a good reason at the time.
I heard a physicist once describe why it's actually physically impossible to follow one of the most common bits of advice that's given to Little League baseball players, which is keep your eye on the ball.
You can't.
You can't.
It's a peripheral vision thing, but you can't tell that to a t-ball player.
Yeah. Well, t-ball you can keep your eye on the ball, but once this pitch speed gets above about 60 miles per hour, the ball's flying faster than the human eye can track when it gets in front of you.
Yeah, fair. Okay.
So you can't keep your eye on the ball.
This is why baseball is the most boring sport that we watch.
And is there anything with more variance among parental theorists than what system of rewards and punishments you use? I mean, TikTok is, my daughter always wants to talk to me about this TikTok she follows about a gentle parenting or whatever they called, where it seems like the kids are running the house and the parents just follow them around and do whatever they want.
I don't know if my sister-in-law listens, but she's a gentle parent, and this is not a parenting style that I can condone or get behind.
Okay, but to go back to no one knows what they're doing and everyone's making up. I don't know if the gentle parenting thing, as much as I find it distasteful and wouldn't do it myself, maybe it yields really great kids. We don't know.
Hang on a second. Yes, it might yield really great kids, but it's going to make my life quantifiably worse before they grow up and self-actualize.
Sure. So we get a vote there. Asking what I can do to help. You know, when I was trying to get some parents, I don't know, maybe some parents are content getting to level 1 and keeping them there forever. Like, just do what I tell you. I'm happy with that. That's all I want.
So, to be fair, there are some parents that never climbed out of level 1 themselves.
Yeah, maybe that's what gives rise to that. I'm the only one that has wisdom, and you'll never get any of your own, and I don't trust you to get any of your own. So as long as you just do what I say, you're going to be okay. That's really unhealthy.
That is an insecure person that wants to continue to be seen as a demigod by their children because it reinforces their own ego. Dude, just grow up. That's an emotionally immature person.
So another reason I can see people never transferring out of that is there's 2 problems that happen when you try to get out of obedience into ask what else I can do to help. And that is it's a huge mental load for a parent to have a kid always coming back and asking for more guidance. And the second is sometimes they do what I call weaponized incompetence.
Which
is like,
the parents.
I'll make you not want to play this game because I'm going to do it wrong until you stop asking me to do stuff.
Ooh, my son does this. Tries to do this to us. We ask him a question. He goes, what? Like, just like a complete blank look on his face. And like, I have to tell him, I've told him this multiple times. This calendar year,
me, boy.
It is January. Like, okay, 1, I made up that trick. Don't try to pass it off on me. 2, I know exactly how smart you are. So no, you don't get to play dumb. And 3, you're stalling for time. If you want to stall for time with me, the more effective method is telling me to my face, let me think about that for a second. I need to stall for time. If you say those words, I'll give you all the time in the world because this is my failing as a parent. I think I'm smarter than you, and I don't care what argument you come up with. I will be able to override it.
Okay. Wow. You've given that lecture recently. Yeah, I could tell. You're like, was it good? Yeah, no.
Listen,
did I rush it?
This is something that you and our listeners will never know. Does Josh actually say all this crap, or is he just really good with coming up with stuff on the spot?
All right. The third level, figure out what needs to be done and do it. Again, like, what if you're wrong? What if they're wrong? Here's the risk as a parent. Like, if I relinquish control instead of having them come to me for guidance every time they're going to do something, and I let them decide what they think they should do, they're a kid. They don't know enough. They might choose the wrong thing.
Well, we talked about this before, though. We have to recognize the level that they're at, how old they are, and what level of responsibility that we would expect them to have at this age, and then find low-risk scenarios where they can utilize their own judgment and see what will happen. This is okay. All right, here's a great example. My wife and I are just recently discussing this. Next calendar year, or next school year, rather, we're debating whether or not we're going to have the before and after care. Like, our kids are old enough, they can get themselves to school. Breakfast starts at a specific time, and then school starts at another time. And she's like, yeah, but I don't trust them to get there on time. And I say, okay, worst case scenario, they underestimate the amount of time it's going to take them to walk to school, and they're late. What happens? And we haven't answered this question because, like, if the answer is one of the parents has to go to the office and sign them in, that's unacceptable because we will both be at work. Yeah. But if the answer is, oh, well, they just like get scolded or a slap on the wrist, like that's intense for them, but incredibly low risk for us. And so that's one of those things, like, that's a self-correcting error. Like, that'll happen.
You're right.
once.
And that's a good example of a good set of consequences, incentives, and punishments, and a bad one. Like, one was oriented towards keeping them at level 2 and having the parents be accountable, and one's oriented towards having the kids be accountable and the punishments being directed towards them.
Well, so in one hand, I've got, all right, this is how much I pay for this before care that we may or may not need next year. And in the other hand is this risk of getting called back from work and having to drive a half an hour to sign a piece of paper because they were late. And whoa, if you're late for school and you get a slap on the wrist, that's enough for a kid to not do it again, right?
Right.
But Ben, if I've got to waste an hour of my day to drive back here and sign a piece of paper, like, I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, sorry about that. They'll be on time next time. I'm going to sign the paper. Then I'm going to kneel down, get in their face, and be like, you'll be lucky if you're alive tomorrow to be late to school.
And maybe that's what they're counting on when they have it that way, is that if they make it miserable enough for the parents, that it'll roll downhill. I don't know why I turned into Gollum for a second there.
The parentses. The preciouses. And, all right, I have to get this in there. Public school system, I love you. Like, the world relies on you for free childcare during the day, but you do not respect the 2 working parents freaking at all. When I say I can't come to the school and sign my kid in, that is not because I don't want to. That is because I physically am unable to.
Yeah. I feel like this is a whole different segment. We could totally go down this path of how the other mechanisms in our society feed into and contribute or don't contribute to your ability to do this. The last level 4, is putting them out on their own and being like, now you choose for yourself. The downside of this is, like, what if you don't like their choices? Like,
interesting. Not do their choices make their life worse? Do I approve of their choices?
No,
Ben,
you're right. I chose those words on purpose.
Oh.
Now you're free to choose for yourself. Wait, not that.
Wait, I don't like that. Oh, is it illegal? Is it immoral? Is it terrible? Is the world going to end because of these decisions? No, Ben, let them be their own person.
And again, some parents avoid this entirely. They're just like, no, you can stay here forever, and I'll just be in control, and I don't have to face this.
This is all right. So this is something that some parents never get over. This is I can see your growth as a parent now here, what you're talking about, because the dynamic has shifted.
In the last 5 years since I introduced this on episode 2. Yep.
You have been their parent their entire existence, but now, if you really want to practice what you preach, if you really want to put your money where your mouth is, you've got to shut up and just accept. And you are on. Oh. You can't be Navi. You cannot be shoving hints down their throat when they're unsolicited. That's just going to piss them off. You have to be on request hints for life only.
Yep. Okay, I want to do a quick microcosm. So you did it with laundry. I want to do it with driving because I'm teaching my last child how to drive right now.
Okay.
At first, you go find a parking lot that's closed and no one else is in, with very few lamp posts.
I think that's how everybody starts their driving lessons.
And you say, do exactly what I say, no more, no less. Don't do anything unless I told you to do it. And I'm very deliberate with them. I have them practice pressing the gas and the brake a bunch without even taking the car out of park.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. The brake pedal, it's got a feel to it. You've got to get used to that.
When you've given them enough skills and they've shown the ability to listen, and underneath that, they're just getting familiarity with it and learning the decision-making process and applying critical thinking and utilizing the information they're receiving and the feedbacks and getting familiarity with the console, then you say, all right, I'm going to give you some short instructions, and then when you don't know, ask me what you need to do next. That's level 2.
Okay. I'm going to give you some vectors. I'm going to let you try to do some problem solving.
Yep. So I'll do that to kid. I'll be like, all right, I want you to go down and park in the last spot in the left in front of the street light. And if you can't figure it out, ask me, and I'll tell you what to do. The third level is you've given them, they've passed the test that shows they understand the traffic laws, they've shown they're familiar with the car, they've done plenty of driving, supervised, and now you just expect them to do the right thing. Hey, something's going to happen that I didn't teach you all the rules about, and you're just going to have to use your critical thinking and think fast and make a good decision and try to do the right thing.
I can see why you ended up with 2 totaled cars.
Less experienced drivers just are more likely to make bad decisions. That's why insurance costs so much for teenagers. They just sometimes take all of everything you gave them and still make a bad choice.
You don't think there's a middle? There's like another one there that needs to happen?
What is it?
I don't know. Like, so I'm trying to figure that out. Like, you give instructions. Like, that's the level 2 is you give instructions and they ask you if they need help, right? But there's got to be a middle ground between, because it sounds like what you're saying is like, okay, hey, I need you to go pick up your kids pick up your brother and sister from their after school practice and bring them home. Is there a middle ground to that?
So it's funny because I'm doing this like right now. Like my 15-year-old just got her permit, and for instance, I'm like, okay, I need her to add about 3 more skills, but I don't want her to have to add 10 skills because we haven't had time to practice all those. So I'll tell her to drive to her grandma's house, but there's about 3 different ways to get there. And I'm specifically going to take the middle one because it doesn't have any roundabouts and doesn't go on the main road and doesn't have any traffic lights.
Okay. But that's what you do. You tell them to take that route, or you just let them pick the route for themselves?
We haven't got to pick the route for themselves yet.
Okay.
So I'm deliberately choosing a route that has practice of only the skills I want. I know is less likely to have traffic and confounding factors.
So one of the things that my parents did to me is, and I think this is in the middle, before they were sending me off to go pick up my siblings from like whatever practices they were, is they like, hey, we as a family are going to a family thing. Like we do this. This is a normal scheduled event. You're driving us. And no instruction given, but they are all there to provide any help that is necessary, but zero input. Does that make sense?
You're right. I don't know if that's deserving of its own discrete step in my unified parenting theory or if it's just encompassed there. It's like at the beginning of it is when you start doing it this way, and at the end of it is when you've graduated, which is level 4. Be good when I'm not around. Here's the keys to my car.
So hang on, but the level 2 that you're talking about, it's just you and the student in the car, and you give them specific instructions. Yes,
I guess that's what you're describing. It's you've given them instructions, and you need them to ask you when they have a question.
Yeah, here's the other level. There's other people in the car. It's not just you and me. It breaks the student-teacher dynamic. This is you, like, consciously or subconsciously recognize you are now the responsible party for getting this group of people to where they need to go. Maybe that changes it.
Yeah, you're right, and that definitely increases the stakes. I don't know if that's part of what we're trying to do, or if we're just like, hey, we got to go somewhere, we might as well get some driving hours while we're on the way. But when you're in a parking lot and there's no other cars around and you cross over the white line, no one's lives are in danger.
Yeah, but then at the same time, if it's just you and the person in a full parking lot and trying to park, that there's a different dynamic between how you're talking and how you're communicating versus there's 6 other people in the car and we're just doing our normal car stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so along those lines, I bought a bunch of those bright yellow magnets that you could stick on the back of the car that say student driver. Because, and this is true in parenting too. When you're in the process of going through this, like for instance, we went to a roundabout and she kind of panicked and froze up and like stopped in the roundabout before her exit. I'm like, you got it. You got to keep moving in the roundabout.
For you.
But the yellow sticker on the back kept the guy behind us from honking and making her panic and get frazzled. So I was thankful for the yellow sticker.
Oof, I had exactly the opposite reaction. When my dad and I went to buy my first car in the Air Force Base, it was a stick shift little Jeep Comanche pickup truck. I watched my dad hand the money to the guy, and he goes, okay, drive it home. And I was like, I can't drive stick. He's like, you're going to learn. And we sat in the car, and boy, did I learn stick really fast. And we got to the first light, and the light turned green, and I stalled the truck 3 times, and the light turned yellow, and I was still sitting at the line. And there were some very, very upset people in line behind me.
Honking?
Oh, just all the rude gestures and the yelling. And the next time it turned green, I over-revved the engine real hard, but I did not stall it.
Yeah. Wow.
To my father's credit, he was cool as a cucumber the whole time. Yeah, I think he was enjoying the experience.
He was just showing commitment to the method he'd chosen. And that comes from a completely different parenting handbook than the one I have. All right. Well, like you said, when I told you this the first time, I still had them all little, and they were all, transitioning from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 3. And now I've had a bunch that are all on level 4. whether I was ready or not. I've got a missionary in Boston and one in college, 2 hours away from here, and they got their own jobs and their own lives and their own families, and I'm proud of them. And like you said, there is a little bit of adjustment that has to take place where I'm making a different judgment call than like, is what they're doing illegal, immoral, or fattening, or is it just something I don't like?
Oh, man, don't put fattening in this. Don't bring fat into this, Ben, because you're going to start judging me. I do all the fattening things.
Okay, sorry. Is it just something I don't like?
There you go. Thank you. Calling me out. Jeez, I'm not even your kid.
You put that on yourself, man.
Yeah, I guess that's a trigger. I don't know.
I was repeating that because it was a phrase one of my favorite radio talk show hosts used to say.
Oh, immoral, illegal, or fattening?
Yeah.
Ben, I don't think there's anything we can eat in America that isn't fattening.
All right, so that's my reflection on the unified parenting theory. If you have little tiny kids and you're interested in specific methods of rewards and consequences, I went through all of our whole system that we use. If you want to listen to that, go back and listen to episode 2. If you have something you want to add or you want to reflect on your parenting style or your contributions, how things are going, what you think. If you don't have any kids, but you have lots of opinions about the right way to raise kids and you want to tell somebody, you can go on our subreddit and say it there. Or you can go on our Facebook page. Love to hear what you have to say.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. If you like us, your friends probably like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. We get fantastic visibility from that. And if you want me and Ben to continue to show up and just talk at each other, with Ben being super prepared and me just being, I don't know, some jerk that he talks to consistently for no reason, from now until the end of time, please consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.